Creation, Book of Clarity, Chapter 5. She wanted to do well on her first try at creating life on a planet, so she figured she'd start with something simple: vegetation. As if to directly contradict herself, she briefly remembered her time on a planet in the Erasin galaxy, Abel. One of the vegetative towers, a tree-like organism, shape-shifted its leafy canopy into a mouth reminiscent of a Venus flytrap and consumed an entire family of Irs, the non-identical equivalent to humans. Just moments before, the family had been throwing their waste onto the vegetation around them. Being that this was a repeated offense toward the vegetation of that planet, the tower then devoured the family in one gulp. What happened on planet Abel wasn't by any means a unique occurrence on planets that offered free will to all organisms, however. That is why more often than not, vegetation was not given free will. The idea of free will changed depending on the universe, galaxy, or world. This was because each subset of existence held the power to determine the freedoms of the beings it created. Some wielded that power strictly, by removing abilities to speak and learn, while others allowed it to be loose by permitting inhabitants to shift into any form as they pleased. Some worlds even had seemingly open freedoms that were in actuality inhibited by those who sought power in that realm. When she first started her travels, she was often confused trying to decipher which freedom was enacted in which reality. Not knowing whether or not she violated a selective law had gotten her into tight binds more than once. Eventually, she learned to figure it out through sensing the emotions of the planet's inhabitants. In the planets she'd visit, they often had avenues of communication that didn't require words, just feelings or frequency. Because of her earthly origins, she was so used to communications through speech, so emotions weren't initially of much importance. But she didn't allow that to hinder her from learning how to communicate. Her determination paid off, and soon she was fluent in emotional communication and could attune herself to the planet's frequency to understand what would be allowed in terms of free will. If the planet felt too overwhelming to stay grounded in, she'd eject. If not, she proceeded with the mission. Through her times exploring creation, she had observed her fair share of completely free will planets and worlds that felt more like a planetary prison system. Some were fun, while others were chaotic or overly orderly. In all, she felt that the planets that held the most restrictive laws had the most order, but eventually, a bit of life had to be sacrificed for it to remain that way. That was not an energy she wanted to duplicate. In about 85% of the worlds she visited, she encountered planets that hindered vegetation by requiring it to adhere to strict laws: gravity, immovable rooting systems, shape-shifting restrictions, etc. It got pretty specific and technical. These laws negated the notion of free will for the vegetation on that planet, while the remaining 15% of planets she visited allowed for free-willed vegetation. In her experience, there seemed to be a cosmic cycle where free-willed human-like creatures disregarded the importance of vegetation on their planets. So this usually resulted in some form of abuse of vegetation at the hands of those creatures, and the status of free-willed versus bounded vegetation made no difference to their treatment. Earth was no exception. On the planets that restricted vegetative free will, less conflicts between species occurred. But on a planet that offered free will to all beings, vegetation tended to prove misconceptions wrong. They were just as powerful, if not more so, than human equivalents across universes, even with the history of mistreatment. So when they felt it necessary, free-willed vegetation made it a point to fight back. It was as if the free-willed vegetation on certain planets felt the need to honor the sacrifices that bound vegetations in other planets made, even if that meant turning violent. The incident she witnessed on planet Abel was one she would like to avoid. As she thought this, the echo began to buzz with an almost nervous excitement. The buzzing was so strong the surface of the planet began to tremble. The echo had a serious decision to make. Who should receive free will on their planet? Even outside of the vegetation versus human equivalent argument, the idea of free will was controversial across the universe. It was also a bit more complex outside of Earth's realm. Humans had a condensed version of free will, a version that made it so that one was only as free as each individual believed themselves to be. In the rest of the universe, free will, in its truest essence, had almost no limitations. However, to be fair, in the rest of the universe, complete free will was non existent. That was why the laws existed. Focusing back on vegetation, she sent a question out into the echo. Should we allow vegetation on our planet the opportunity of free will? The question rippled through the planet, being met with varying answers from every direction. Each consciousness spoke up at once, sharing individual experiences with vegetation through their lifetimes. The entire planet experienced the memories at the same time. In one memory, they were a small human child in an orchard, a young girl with long, curly black hair. She wore a soft pink dress and laughed as she was lifted into the air by an older man, her grandfather. As she was lifted, she reached one arm out and grabbed an orange from a tree. The child thanked the tree as the grandfather lowered her back to the ground. The girl and her grandfather sat at the trunk of the tree as they peeled and ate the fruit. In another memory, they were an animalistic creature. It spoke no words and had no thought patterns. It stood tall on 5 uneven legs, and as it walked, it limped. On either side, the creature had 3 arms that hung down to its feet, which were webbed between the toes. At the ends of each arm were 4 pointed spears that bent inward to form claws. In the memory, the creature was running from something. It scrambled into a forest-like cave of vegetation, frantically searching for a place to hide. They all felt the heightened sense of danger present in the memory. It was thick, heavy, yet strangely calm. She knew if she were experiencing being hunted in her human form, she would have been gripped by fear. But this creature wasn't afraid, just alert. The creature, unable to find an adequate hiding space, took refuge behind a vine as the cave began to shift. The floor of the cave rumbled as it lifted up into the air. The opening of the cave closed in. It wasn't a cave. It was a mouth. The vines inside began to move, winding themselves tight around the creature. They could feel as the realization of being caught rose in the creature's body, the memory abruptly ended. Additional memories flowed in. Short memories, long memories, memories that felt as if they lasted lifetimes. They were all so real. She had never experienced so many different emotions at once. There were memories that made her laugh, memories that made her scream, memories that made her feel infinitely alive. From one single question came multidimensional stories of the pleasure and horror that resulted from the existence of vegetation and its status as a free-willed or law-bound organism. As the memories were reported, the Echo gathered data to rule a verdict on their planetary ordinance. Each memory served as either evidence, a question, or an answer. As they experienced each memory, each thought form, the energies making up the Echo slowly came to the same consensus. The vegetation on the planet would receive free will, but any organism outside of vegetation would not. The decision felt final and resulted in a silent vibration of serenity spreading throughout. The initial excitement was gone, though the Echo was confident in its choice. Deciding on the law of living creatures was always a somber matter because the laws of life must always be obeyed. In any matter, the Echo decided vegetation deserved free will on its planet. Whether the other planets across the galaxy knew it or not, those that restricted vegetation allowed for the continued oppression of the collective species. The Echo felt it was dutiful and even responsible to shift the narrative. So, with the conclusion of its deliberation, The echo started its new chapter. Together, the thought of creating life spread, and they envisioned their surface to be full of vegetation. Hello again, this is Michaela Simone Mack, author of Creation, narrator of the Book of Clarity. Thank you again so much for listening. There will be new episodes every Friday, and if you like reading these chapters, there will be new chapters published every Monday on Kindle Vella. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy. Please like, comment, share, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you next week.